If you've ever gotten chewed out by your orchestrator for sending MIDI data that you didn't play to the click, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Hi, I'm Ryan Thomas with 8DO, and this video is not a walkthrough. It is not a technical examination of a library. This video is an exploration of Anthology, and Anthology is an experience. So what Anthology is essentially is an amalgamation, or an anthology, if you will, of quite a few different string libraries that 8DO has produced over the years. And they took the strengths of all of those libraries and combined them into one volume, which is Anthology. So they streamlined the interface, and they combined some different articulations into single patches. They've also updated the library even further. So in this video, we are going to be just checking out all the different things that Anthology can do, and we're also going to be covering those updates, which include some workflow improvements, but also a couple new articulations, including a polyphonic legato that really blew me away when I tried it out, as well as a very, very exciting new articulation, which is the legato arcs. So let's just go ahead and dive right in. We're gonna listen to some musical examples that cover a variety of genres, and we're gonna do some live demonstrations as well. So join me as we explore Anthology. And I'm just going to start off by very briefly reviewing the interface for those of you who might not be familiar with Anthology. You've got these three main patches here, and when you load any of them up, you are going to get all of the sections of the string orchestra. And if you want to isolate one or the other, you can just turn them off like this, and now you've just got the violins. Or, if you want to, you can also just load the individual sections, and you load the articulations in those the same way that you load them in the full ensemble patches. So you just click on the slot and you pick whatever articulation you want to load, so you can build all your own custom key switches. It's just a really nice workflow, very elegant. And you also have, in the individual sections, the auxiliary patches, and these are going to contain a lot of the new content in the new update for Anthology, which is going to be the Chordal Legato and the Legato arcs, which are truly just mind-blowing. We will get to those a little bit later on in the video. But right now, I just want to show you kind of the different sonic signatures of the ensemble and the chamber strings. Of course, you know how the solo strings are going to sound, but the chamber strings you can think of as basically Divisi. So if you've got a passage that has a lot of, string harmonies, a lot of different string parts like violin 1A and B, violin 2A and B, those chamber strings really come in handy because you can write all these really nice harmonies with lots of colors without it sounding too dense. And it's also really nice for TV work. One of the trends, I think, in soundtracks that are written for TV shows is just kind of a smaller, more intimate chamber string sound. So these are really useful for that particular kind of sound. So I'm just going to give you an idea of what the ensemble strings sound like versus the chamber strings real quick. So these are just going to be the ensemble legato strings. So this is the entire string orchestra. And we're going to go ahead and check out some of the shorts as well. So these are the feathered spiccato. These are the spiccato tapped. These are the staccato. This is the marcato. And now we're going to check out the chamber strings, and these just have such a beautiful character to them. And I'm going to go ahead and just map the expression, the vibrato, and the legato volume all to CC1 because I'm lazy. Look, when you have to put out, 2 to 3 minutes of music every day, you kind of have to find these workflow hacks. So it makes sense to me that the legato volume is going to track with the overall dynamics. It makes sense to me that the vibrato intensity is also going to track with the dynamics. So could you get better results if you individually tweaked all of these parameters? Quite frankly, I don't know, and I don't really care. This works for me, so we're just gonna roll with it. And it also works, of course, for the purposes of the video. So this is the chamber string legato one, and I'm just gonna play that same sort of arpeggio. Just gorgeous legato. And let's go ahead and cue up the feathered spiccato. So you can just hear how much more intimate that sounds. Again, really good for TV work. And what we're going to go ahead and do now is listen to some different musical examples that span a few different genres and styles. And I've written some for the full ensemble, for the chamber strings, for the solo strings, which, I love that you have a full string library with solo strings included. That's not very common to have in the same library. And the other nice thing about that is that the solo strings, because they've been recorded in the same space, in the same way as the ensemble strings, they can be used as sort of a first chair. And that's a really nice thing to be able to have in a string library. So let's go ahead and check out an example here of a kind of a fantasy-esque piece. A lot of these examples just kind of came about by me playing with these patches and being inspired. And I actually started off here in the Ensemble Tremolo patch, and this just came out of that. So I'm going to go ahead and set up these contact instances here, and we'll give this a listen. And the basses just have such a nice gravitas to them in this piece when they're playing that melody line with the cello in the beginning. So let's go ahead and move on to this next example here, which is going to showcase some of the shorts and also just how quickly the legato can play and still sound realistic. And just a couple of notes before we listen to this. One of the more difficult things to do, I think, in programming strings is to write a repeated legato pattern that actually sounds realistic. I found that when you have a really fast legato pattern, it can start to sound really synthy, and somehow Anthology manages to overcome this. And secondly, you can see in all of these instances here where I am triggering the different articulations. So for example, a little bit later on in the piece, I actually use staccato and then spiccato tapped to simulate sort of a da-da, da-da. So just be listening for these things. Let's go ahead and check it out. Now, in this selection, you were able to hear all the short notes that you get with the library, and also just how you can use them in different ways to create different articulations in combination with each other. And just to highlight this technique, I'm going to go ahead and solo the violin so that you can see in a little bit more detail what exactly is going on here. So you can see how combining short notes of various lengths can give you some really cool articulations. So let's go ahead and move on to the next example here, and this is going to feature the Sordino legato, which is a really beautiful articulation, and it's not one that you see too often in other string libraries. So let's go ahead and check it out. And one thing that I do want to point out before we listen to this is that I have all of the sound settings just set to their default values. So this is pretty much just how the library sounds right out of the box, except I do have, obviously, a little bit of EQ, a little bit of compression, and I'm going to show you how I mix these a little bit later on, but for the most part, you're hearing pretty much an out-of-the-box sound with a little bit of EQ and some reverb. So let's go ahead and just check out these beautiful legato Sordinos. And I think we should also demo the violin and the viola in isolation. So this is going to be the violin. Just gorgeous. And this is going to be the viola. So I just found this particular sound to be really useful for scoring emotional scenes that also kind of need a touch of intimacy. And now I would actually like to go ahead and turn our attention to the chamber strings. We've got a couple different passages using the chamber strings. So let's go ahead and check out some of these examples here. And like I'd mentioned previously, these are going to work especially well if you have, a lot of parts for the strings, or I think also, if you've got really closed chord voicings, Divisi strings work really well because they tend to have a little bit more definition than the larger sections, so the sound doesn't get quite as muddy. So let's check it out and see how these strings do with this. I think that the Divisi strings just work really well on passages like these. Again, where you've got some really, really close, tight harmonies and a lot of chord colors. And I was really impressed with how they performed. And once again, the legato is just so playable with these. So I'm just going to go ahead and demo the cello for you. Yeah, again, so it's just really playable. I love the cello patch in particular. And I've also chosen to use the chamber strings here to show you one of the features in the new Anthology update. And it is beyond cool. I don't even know what witchcraft was used to create this. All I know is that you can now basically create movement within an arc without starting a new swell. So I'm going to show you what I'm talking about here in this example here, and you can see all the MIDI data and everything that's going on. So just give it a listen and you'll kind of see what I'm talking about here. So now you can have suspensions and movement and whatever else you want to in the middle of the arc, and it won't start a new swell, which is just such a huge deal because I love these articulations. You know, it's one thing to use your mod wheel to crossfade, you know, between different dynamics layers and to create a swell that way. It's another thing entirely for the swell to actually be created by the player in the moment. You get that realism, you get that emotion. And I should also note that if I had wanted to, I could have played this to a grid. You can actually change the length of the arc using the speed control. I actually have that mapped to one of the controllers on my keyboard, but I kind of wanted to just do this one freehand because I thought it felt a little bit more emotional than just doing it to a grid. So here's another just live example, and I'll go ahead and actually manipulate the speed for you so that you can kind of hear the various lengths of arcs. And we can make these a little bit shorter if we want. Or we can make them longer. So you just get so much more flexibility with these, and I just love that you can have movement within an arc now. Let's go ahead and check out the solo strings. Like I said before, I like using these as a first chair. They really just help add definition to your ensemble strings. So I've got an example here of basically a string quintet, and let's give it a listen. So just like with the ensemble strings, the legato is really beautifully done with these. I'll just go ahead and demo the cello for you real quick. And you can also have a lot of fun with just the solo string ensemble patch. And let's play around with some of the shorts. Let's go with spiccato. And even playing these like that can almost start to get you kind of a chamber string sound, because you are getting quite a few voices in these polyphonic patches. Now let's go ahead and check out the Chordal Legato, which is one of the other really significant features in the new update. And it kind of blew my mind when I was trying it out because it's just very intuitive, it's very playable, surprisingly so in fact. So here's just a quick example of that Chordal Legato. So this is true polyphonic legato that also allows you to have asymmetrical movement. So you don't have to have the notes moving at the same time. So notice how in the viola track here, you have asymmetrical movement between the first and second viola, and the scripting somehow still gets it right. And the quality of the legato is still the same as in the other legato patches. So just a really, really cool update. Now, I did say that we were going to talk about how these are mixed. And as you can see, there's really not a whole lot going on here. Ozone, by the way, actually isn't doing anything. I just have that there for metering purposes. So in this EQ here, I'm just dipping a little bit around 2.4K. In this one here, I'm dipping a little bit around 750, and then I'm just boosting some at 72 hertz just to add some beef to the basses. And then I'm using the Revival plugin by Slate Digital to add some shimmer on the top end and a little bit of thickness. Now this compressor is actually only going to trigger if all the string sections are playing, really loud. So I don't even know if it triggers at all in this session. And then I've just added a little bit more EQ down here, and you can see all those values. And then I'm just sending to a couple reverbs here, one algorithmic and one convolution. So that's pretty much it. Not a whole lot going on, and it is subjective. I'm not saying you should mix them like this. This is just how I like to mix this library. So of course there is so much more that you can do with the library, but we wanted to keep the video under 30 minutes, so I just wanted to touch on the highlights, as well as cover the major features in the new update, which are just so cool. I love the legato arcs, I love the polyphonic legato. So I hope you enjoyed the video, I hope you were able to get some useful information out of it, and we look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thanks for watching.